Get going. I'd like to welcome everybody to the 2015 July 1st City Rapid City Legal and Finance Committee. First order of business is a roll call and determination of a quorum.
Here.
Thank you. Up next is the adoption of the agenda. Do we have any additions or deletions from the agenda? Entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Second. Motion by Laurenti, second by Nordstrom. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Up next is general public comment. Now it's time for general public comments. If anybody has any issues that are not currently on the agenda, they can discuss them and would not be added to the agenda without unanimous vote by the council members present. Does anybody wish to speak on anything not currently on the agenda? I do not have any legal speaker request forms for anything not currently on our agenda. Moving on now to consent items numbers 1 through 13. I'm now going to open up public comment on items 1 through 13. I don't currently have any speaker request forms on any of the consent items 1 through 13. Does anybody wish to speak on those items? I'm going to close consent items 1 through 13 public comment. I'll go to the council members, see if anybody wants to remove anything from the consent calendar. Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the balance.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Laurenti, second by Drew to approve items 1 through 13. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Now moving on to non-consent items numbers 14 through 22, and I'm going to open public comment on those items. I do have a few speaker request forms. If you want to speak on items 14 through 22, please step over to the podium, fill out a speaker request form, and hand it off to Maggie up here up front. And I will currently go on item 15, which is, I'll go to Steve, sorry, sir, how do you say your last name, sir? Winia? Steve Winia? Yeah. If you would please approach the podium, sir. Identify yourself, and you'll have 3 minutes when the screen light goes on, and 30 seconds is your warning light, and the red light, would you please wrap it up? Thank you, sir.
Casinos and other real estate here in Rapid City. I'm here to ask you to recommend to the City Council to release some additional or all of the video lottery license that the city is currently holding. I have 3 approved locations, meaning the conditional use permits have been approved by the City Council, and have not able to purchase or get any licenses from the city. I've contacted all of the inactive license holders. There's 7 of them, I believe. I got those names from Charlene. And no one is interested in selling. I can give you the names of the people I called and contacted to prove to you that I actually did talk to them. And like I say, I can't, no interest in anybody selling, you know. I have several licenses myself, and you know, I realize that the city hasn't released any of these licenses for 20 years. I've been here longer than that, and it's been at least 20 years since the city has released any additional lottery licenses. The city is growing. You know, the number of licenses should be increasing with the population. It does, by the ordinance, increase every few years with the city ordinance. And I have a new, I'm planning, actually I'm building on the site already, but I have a new retail mall that I'm not going to build on it until I have another license, so I can open a 20 machine location on that property. That's the only way you can, you know, I have a single I want to move to that property, and then I need 1 additional license, which I can't find. And like I said, I've also got 2 other licenses, conditional use permits approved for an additional property on the south side of town. So again, I would ask that you recommend to the council to release some or all of the video lottery licenses. There's a recommendation to the city council to have a lottery once a year, which is coming up in July, and this would be a good time to do that. One-time lottery, and release a few more licenses for people that are looking for licenses, and no one is looking to sell or will sell. So with that, I guess I'll I'd like to ask if you guys have any questions for me. Any of them?
When we come to that item, we can ask you questions if we have any. So if you just stand by, sir. When we come to that item, we'll read it. Is there anything else? You done?
No.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, up next, I'll go to Mr. Dale Barcher on item number 15 as well. Sir, if you step to the podium, address yourself. You have 3 minutes, 30 seconds at the yellow light.
Good afternoon, committee members. I want to first begin by thanking you for your service to our community. I'm Dale Barcher, a 30-year resident of Rapid City and the executive director of the Family Heritage Alliance. We rise in opposition to this agenda item number 15, which is an unprecedented expansion of video lottery in our great community. South Dakota legalized video lottery in 1989. We became the first in the nation to do so, something of which I am not proud of. Since then, this gaming has brought a stream of revenue and a steady stream of broken lives and societal ills. These folks, negatively affected by video lottery, are not some faceless collateral damage by the industry. No, they are family members, friends, employees, employers, and acquaintances. The request before you today is an expansion of video lottery licenses. Each one of these licenses allows for 10 video lottery terminals. This is convenience gaming. They are literally everywhere. Currently, the Rapid City area has issued 69 video lottery licenses, and 5 of them are considered inactive. That's a possible 690 video lottery terminals in our city limits. We believe there is no need for more. Council member, the handout that you have before you titled The Cost of Profit only but scratches the surface when it comes to the personal, family, business, and community destruction of video lottery addiction brings. We are talking about abuse, the crimes, the suicides, the divorces, the embezzlements, and other costs to society brought on by the video lottery industry. The Keystone Treatment Center, located in Canton, South Dakota, calls video lottery the crack cocaine of the gaming industry for good reason. Video lottery addictions are uniquely addictive, and they happen fast. We would that you would follow the lead of the South Dakota State Legislature. In 2014 and then again in 2015, the South Dakota Legislature, after vigorous debate on this issue, voted a resounding no to expanding video lottery in our state. We would that you would follow the lead of what I understand are the previous 4 mayors of Rapid City and something like 15 city councils who have repeatedly said no to expanding video lottery in our community. Ladies and gentlemen, today this matter can be settled. It can be settled by a simple tabling motion. Today you have the opportunity to vote no to the expansion of video lottery. Why? Because you know it's in the best interest of our citizens. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Up next, we'll go to Mr. Peter Mazzella. Did I say that correct?
Got it.
Okay, thank you. And you have 3 minutes, sir, and 30 seconds is the warning light. Thank you very much. Identify yourself for the record.
Thank you. My name is Peter P. Mazzella, Jr., and I live at 23614 Wilderness Canyon Road in Rapid City. Actually, we're kind of out of town, and I'm speaking today about item 16, discussion regarding proposed limestone mine on Highway 16. I live in Copper Oaks 3. There are 3 developments there, and I have spoken to almost everybody in all 3 developments, and I can tell you that we are categorically opposed in every way, shape, or form to this development. We are concerned about our property values. We are concerned about the proximity of the operations to our community. And we're also concerned about the noise. There will be someone who will say, well, the noise won't be as loud as motorcycles, but the noise that we're concerned about is the noise of dynamiting near our house. And as you know, there has been a concern, was it up in Sturgis now, where they brought in a gun range? The noise from gunfire and dynamite is completely different than any kind of noise that comes from traffic, from trucks, from motorcycles. It really does affect us adversely. In addition, we're very concerned about the amount of traffic that the trucks will generate. We've heard all sorts of things about anywhere from 15 to 75 trucks a day coming in and out of that. And I don't have any statistics on that, but this is what I heard at the county hearing. And I know that the county has turned it down, and I know that no one has really recommended this. But I'm here today to let you know that our community in Copper Oaks 1, 2, and 3 is categorically opposed to this, and we're concerned for all of the reasons that I enumerated. If you have any questions later on, I'll stay for that. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you for hearing me today.
Thank you, sir. Okay, is that on this item, sir? Okay.
Yes.
I'll just keep them in order if that's okay. Mr. Wes Shelton, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself? You have 3 minutes as well, and warning lights at 30 seconds. Thank you.
I'm Wes Shelton from 4928 Raven Circle, and speaking regarding an issue just outside the city limits on Highway 16. The concern here is a purchase of land that's being made by a company that requested to zone this land to heavy industrial. Don't know if you're familiar with it. I do have some maps available if there's a way to pass any of these out to you folks so you can see what I'm talking about. Immediately south of Independence Hall on Highway 16 is 145 acres of land that was recently put on the market and appears to be under contract. A request was made to the Planning and Zoning Commission at the county to rezone it to heavy industrial so that it could become a mine. The County Planning and Zoning Board refused that request, and in fact, when it went to the County Commission, the company had withdrawn their request to even allow it, or to ask it to go to heavy industrial. However, the issue that I think should be of concern to the city is that under the county planning and zoning, it's general agriculture zoning. And in the county's general ag zoning, mining is permitted. And the concern I hope to the city is that because this is within a 3-mile radius of Rapid City, the city maps, and I don't know if there's anyone here with planning and zoning that could confirm that, but the city shows that as park forest for their long-term planning. So the concern is that we may wind up with a gravel pit of 145 acres. The second concern is that there's an adjacent 350 acres that were listed on the same day and came off the market on the same day. I've not been able to confirm whether or not that land is under contract, but they are contiguous to each other. If they were purchased by the same company and they apply for a mining permit, we could now be talking about a mine of in excess of 500 acres immediately on Highway 16, just south of Independence Hall. That would take in the property all the way up to Spring Creek, along Sheridan Lake Road, west of Highway 16, all the way to Bear Country and back to Highway 16. It's a very, very large piece of land. So at this point, I don't know that the city has any power to do anything with this, but I did want to bring it to your attention. I would certainly ask whatever you can direct of planning and zoning to look into it, to see whether or not we want to have a mine of this size immediately adjacent to the city. The second set of maps I'm passing out shows the adjoining 350 acres. And again, you can see that they're contiguous. If all of that turns into a mine, we suddenly have a 500-acre mine in what the city considers to be park forest. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Up next, I'll go to Mr. Mike Whalen, item number 21. Are you still here? Okay, I'll go to Mr. Jeff Loggy then in that case. He stepped out. Okay, I'll just go to, okay, Mr. Whalen, you want to go first, or Mr. Loggy? Doesn't matter to me.
That's fine.
Okay.
My name is Michael Whalen. I'm a local attorney here. And I'm appearing on behalf of, I think, numerous consumers. And in that regard, in favor of an amendment as suggested by item number 21. I have prepared, and some of the You might recall that we were to get together in between our last meeting and this meeting in order to try and come up with a draft. That didn't happen. The meeting didn't happen. I'm not sure exactly why. Nonetheless, the case that I'm involved in, the litigation I'm involved in representing the homeowner with expansive soil problems that you might recall utterly devastated her home and resulted in a loss of over $200,000 total. In that case, there's been a recent development that I think you ought to know about, and that is that Judge Heidi Lindgren, in that case 3 weeks ago, ruled that there was an affirmative duty imposed by the law on developers to disclose to contractors that the existence of expansive soil. That's good news. It only adjusted what I thought would be appropriate. I had started drafting on several drafts with regards to the ordinance and realized that with that development and the anticipation that that would become the law in the state of South Dakota by way of the ruling from the judge, that perhaps keep it simple, like a carburetor. A simple one is better. So I revisited the proposed amendment and only added the words and slabs after the words foundations. I do have a handout in that regard. And the reason for that amendment is that change, modification, is of course that slabs are much more affected by expansive soils than would be a foundation. So I would ask that you give a recommendation to the council of passing this amendment. I think this is the 10th time I've been before some body of the city. I've laid out the facts for you before. No one seems to dispute that it is a problem. It's an ongoing problem. It gives rise to litigation. And it would be in the best interest of not only the homeowners and consumers, but also the developers, the contractors, subcontractors. And I would suggest the realtors as well. If there are any questions, I'll certainly answer them. I may have to leave after this, though.
Thank you, sir. Up next, we'll go to Mr. Jeff Loggy on the same item, number 20 and 21, I guess. You speak on...
Yeah, I'm Jeff Loggy, Rapid City Government Affairs Chairman for Black Hills Home Builders. I'm going to speak on the soils issue first. And we did meet in-house with our builders, an attorney that is a member as well as a soils professional. We thought we had all the details worked out. I know, and Jason Smiley was who was with us. We thought we had details worked out in that meeting where essentially the soils professionals would conduct a upfront investigation at whatever minimal cost can be done, whether it just be a profile or whatever, to determine whether or not there's expansive soils. If there was no expansive soils, essentially that would be the end of it. His report would say that. If there was expansive soils, he would provide a remediation, whether it be 2 feet of fill, 3 feet of fill, 4 feet of fill, whatever it may be. Then after that, during final inspection, before final inspection, the builder was to sign an affidavit declaring that the work had been done per the direction of the soils professional. Apparently the soils professionals don't like that. If they are not involved in the inspections, while the engineered fill is going in, they do not even want to do the upfront inspections. I try not to create a jobs bill here by doing this. We are trying to eliminate some cost. We know soils is an issue. There's no way we're going to run from it. There's no way you can hide from it. It's either there or it's not. The builders realize that. We had a really good meeting. It opened some eyes, and you know, we couldn't draw a line of where to go and where not to go. And could a line be drawn? Perhaps. I don't know if we're the ones to do that as a builders association. You know, if we're really talking about, you know, expansive and shifting soils. but it's also compressible. So I'm not sure where we're going to go from here. I got this news yesterday morning. I haven't had a chance to reconvene with the builders to discuss this. I'm not sure how much additional cost will be going into that. I'm sure the soils guys are doing this from insurance purposes, that if they're going to suggest a fix, then, you know, if we're not going to use them, maybe another affidavit. I mean, you either turn the reports in with you if you are using a soils professional to do the soils compactions on the engineered fill, turn those in with the affidavit, or perhaps something is signed by the soils professional saying, we provided direction, but that's where it stopped. I don't know legally how that all works. We are working on that. I talked to Jason a couple times trying to figure out, you know, if there's a way to make this, you know, at this point we'd probably need a couple more weeks to be able to sit down next week, and with the holiday and everything else, and perhaps, you know, it's really going to come what the soils professional's role is in this. We thought we had it worked out. So if you'd want to continue this for a couple of weeks, we can meet one more time and either have a solution. As far as the sheetrocking unfinished spaces, we're still 100% opposed to that. It's just adding a lot of additional cost. We haven't had any further meetings with the fire department to discuss this. I know they were doing some research, but at this time we're still 100% opposed to it, just for additional cost. Thanks.
Thanks, sir. Up next, we go to Justina and Scott Glasgow on item number 22.
Hi, my name is Scott Glasgow, and I'm speaking on behalf of my wife, Justina. First, I want to thank Darla for returning my call yesterday. We've lived at 327 Mead for approximately 15 years. My wife's mental disorder for over a decade. She's been through trying multiple psychotropic medications whose side effects are unacceptable. She's also self-medicated with self-destructive results. Then in April, a gift of pygmy milking goats, a 22-inch milking mother and her 18-inch nursing kid, Venus and Athena, changed her life and brought some order and different behavior patterns in her mental disorders. She needs them, with their daily care has added to her care. She wakes up at dawn to feed, brush, milk, and care for Athena and her kid Venus. Then she found out about pygmy dairy goats being used for emotional support animals for psychiatric disabled people. I didn't realize that Athena and Venus could bring my family wellness. It can be very difficult for my family to put up with me and my daughter, whose mother doesn't act like other mothers. But now my husband and I share the milking with my daughter, brush. We're all calmly enjoying each other in goat time. Became the medicine for her. Her struggles have been theirs. By having my pygmy donor kid, it gets me out early in the morning. I have always preferred holistic medicine, and this is a natural, organic, that recycles, it's nutritional, and low maintenance and yard maintenance. They help her focus and keep calm and comfort her and her family. Even though the ADA only recognizes dogs and miniature horses as service animals, there's another category called emotional support animals and therapy goats. In your packets I gave you today, I gave you the letter from her doctor about the cover letter of her diagnosing psychologist that considers these therapy animals. In the city, where we're coming problem with the city codes is that the definition of goat, I would like to either separate as miniature pygmy dairy goats for service animals, and the other part is that 3 acres is what it says in your code for any kind of animals like that. 2 miniature goats take about 300 square feet, and those are the 2 parts that we're addressing here. Why 2? Because they're herd animals. They're very quiet and calm when they're in pairs. A single goat is a lonely goat. Why female? Because males are noisy and loud. 2 females are very quiet, and we also milk them. Can you please work with us? We're looking for the pursuit of happiness.
Thank you, sir. Okay, I have no more speaker request forms on any items number 14 through 22 on the non-consent calendar. Does anybody wish to speak on those items that is not currently spoken? Okay, I'm going to close public comment on those items and go immediately to item number 14, which is a request to waive the banner fee for M Week on September 26th through October 4th, 2015 by the South Dakota School Minds Technology. A motion approved by Mr. Alderman Laurenti, second by Drew. If I might offer a friendly suggestion, can we make this for like a multiple year, just because they seem to come every single year, and I don't know that we have is there any opposition to that from any member of the city planning or legal? Anybody have a reason for that? Because they come up every year and that's the same thing. We seem to always approve it. Is that an issue for anybody legally or planning? Just making sure before I make that suggestion. Would that be something you'd be open to? Yes. How, like 3 year? Or we did summer nights for 5 year? 5. Okay. 5 years. Is that okay with the seconder? Is that okay with it? Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 15, Steve Bonina, request to release additional video lottery licenses. Steve Laurenti. Motion tabled by Steve Laurenti. There's no discussion. I'm tabling motion. Second by Weifenbach. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 16, discussion of proposed limestone mine on Highway 16. That's brought forth by me, by Mr. West Shelton, for Mr. West Shelton. I just brought this forth as an informational item because I thought it was important, given that the fact it falls on the busiest highway we pretty much have as far as tourists go, and the idea that Mr. Shelton has evidently left the building, so I've lost my facts. But as under my understanding, there's up to 150 gravel trucks a day that's going to be coming down up and down that road. And if you give you just a 12-hour day, that's what, every 5 minutes you have a gravel truck. Some of them are going to be side dumpers, and it just seems to me like something we're very concerned about something that's going to happen 70 miles away as a mining operation. I think this is something literally in our backyard, falls in our 3 mile radius, and to me would be, I don't know, more concerned immediately to our citizens and definitely our tourist industry. So that's why I brought it forth, just as an educational thing. I don't know, there's not a lot the city can do at this point until they actually apply for some sort of change, but I want to make sure, Mr. Shelton, you are back. Do you have anything you wanted to add to the discussion earlier, sir? I'd mentioned that there was up to 150 vehicles a day projected, is that correct? Yes.
This issue initially came up from a phone call I had from Don Perdue, the owner of Independence Hall. Mr. Perdue was approached by Kroll Ready Mix, the people that are that had applied for the rezoning. They told him that this would be 150 dump trucks a day leaving that property, going on to Highway 16. And these are the big, long side dump trucks, the big ones. I don't know how often you try to turn onto Highway 16 from Independence Hall, but I've been there. It's extremely difficult to get a personal vehicle into the northbound traffic. So if you're now putting in, let's just say, a 10-hour workday, 15 of those side dump trucks every 60 minutes, that's every 4 minutes a truck trying to get across 4 lanes of traffic. There's no median. The truck would not be able to pull into the median and wait for traffic to clear. They'd have to have 4 clear lanes of traffic. And the extraordinary impact that that's going to have on the visitor industry as people are coming down the highway trying to turn left to either go into Reptile Gardens or Independence Hall. With those big dump trucks coming onto the highway, we're going to have safety issues like you can't believe. And the same way as those trucks would be returning to the property from Rapid City, they're going to be slowing to turn to the right, and traffic trying to either turn into Reptile Gardens or Independence Hall or turn across traffic with the big trucks now highballing as fast as they can to come down the hill to make the northbound hill. It's going to be very difficult and very dangerous for eastbound traffic to turn off of Highway 16. I mean, I think each of us can see the kind of concerns that are arising from this. It's probably not necessary for me to enumerate all of them. Again, I would hope that planning and zoning staff would be able to participate in whatever discussions there will be. Unfortunately, as I understand it, because a mining permit does not even go back to the county commission, there's no further review, there's no more public notice. They can simply file a request for a permit, and if they meet all the criteria, we suddenly have a big mine right there with all those trucks. So I would ask planning and zoning, or ask legal and finance to investigate what are the safety issues, what would the highway, what would Department of Transportation, again, if there's long-range planning, I know it's done all the time between the city and state highway, and I know you work with the county. I just would ask that we take some time, we look at all of these issues, and we understand the real complexity of what may be before us.
Thank you, sir. Chair recognizes Alderman Steve Laurenti.
Thank you, Chair. I'll make a motion to acknowledge. If I can get a second, I'll maintain the floor, please.
Motion by Laurenti to acknowledge, second by Nordstrom.
Sure.
Can you have the floor, sir?
And as I was thinking about this, pondering this particular issue, I just wanted to speak on this, and I know it's very early. I probably don't need to speak at this point, but I'm going to anyway. One, because it's outside of the city limits. It's within the 3-mile, purview of the city, but I do want to caution all of the people who believe there may be some tremendous negative impact, that there is also some very positive impact, which is to help diversify our economy, bringing good-paying jobs beyond retail to Rapid City. So I know we're very early here in these stages, but I just want to caution everybody to wait to get all of the information. It's a state highway, so will the state have some recommendations if they approve a permit for the mine that there be something done with the highway so that the traffic issues are mitigated? All of these types of things would still have to come forward, but I just want to caution people in coming out against something before all of the facts are in, all of the information is available, so that we can really take a look at the entire issue as a city and its impact, positive and negative. And so I'll just leave that at the motion to acknowledge. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Laurenti. Steve recognizes. Chair recognizes Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question for either Mr. Landine or Mr. Salon. Is it what role would the city play in this if it's in the county, if it's not being platted, but just if the zoning for the county already matches, does the city have any say in this if this was come to fruition?
I can probably answer that.
Sure, Mr. President.
I'm Brad from Development Services. Sorry, Brett's not here this afternoon, but if it's in the county and the zoning is okay, and they can get a permit, they could probably just get a permit for it. If the city was going to be involved, what would have to happen in this case, I think, is this lot doesn't touch the city. Even if they split the lot, I don't think it would be force annexed. So if they wanted to get a permit in the county, of course, you can't speak for the county, but I think they could just get one, so long as it complied with the regulations for that. They'd have to get the mining permit from the state, that sort of thing. So, but in order for the city to have review on this, they'd have to actually apply for the rezone, I think, and because it's within the 3-mile limit, we all know that. And if it was going to be annexed, it would have to actually be touching the city at some point.
This is zoning, it seems like, from what he said, I don't know, the county already accepts the zoning that it is will be acceptable to a mining practice, I'm assuming. But I guess I just wanted to make you aware of it so you guys are aware of it if it comes across. If we, I didn't know what role the city would play if they're not platting anything. So, thank you.
I could say that for a use permit for something that's a permitted use or conditional use in a county-owned or county lands, the city doesn't typically have anything to do with it.
Okay. Thank you once again. And just to wrap this up, Mr. Sheldon brought this to the CVB board. It was obviously of great concern to the tourist industry, and I thought we got ourselves involved in a 70 mile away uranium mine. And so this is literally on our doorstep, and it's in the 3-mile limit of the city. And I thought, well, it's something that seems to be a little bit more right there for us to deal with, and I think it could be a huge impact if it's true that the traffic is going to be that high. I can't even imagine trying to drive up and down that road and navigate it. The amount of usage that goes on there, gravel trucks are just. I'm as pro-business as you're going to get, especially construction, but that's just doesn't seem like something that'd be very good for us to do. So, if nothing else, the public is aware of that it's still going. It's not a dead deal just because the county commission voted it down, and I think we need to keep our eyes on it if you're concerned, and definitely let your opinion be known to the mining board. I believe that'd be the correct people to talk to. So thank you, Mr. Shelton, for coming. Appreciate everybody's input. Next item. Sorry, motion is to acknowledge. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 17, second reading recommendation of ordinance to revise provisions of management and administration of the municipal airport by amending chapter 7.72 of the Rapid City Municipal Code. Move to approve. Motion by Nordstrom to approve, second by Laurenti. All in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 18, second reading and recommendation of ordinance 6062 to revise provisions regulating activities and operations at the municipal airport by amending chapters 13.28 of the Rapid City Municipal Code.
Move to approve.
Motion by Nordstrom, second by Drew to approve. All in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And number 19 is a report from the Library Board of Trustees regarding county notification of fund shortage and delay in payment. Which one of you gentlemen wants to take it? Mr. Rod Pettigrew? If you please approach the podium, sir. You know the drill.
Good afternoon. I'm Rod Pettigrew, Chairman of the Board of the Rapid City Library Board of Trustees. I have Sean with me. He's our Assistant Library Director, and Kim Beck out of the Finance Office, I suppose. And you have before you a contract that we have with the county that was dated in 2007, outlining the county's responsibilities to fund their part of the library. You have before you a letter dated June 16th from the County Commission basically telling us they're broke. They don't have any money to fund us. And then you have a letter from the Rapid City Library Board of Trustees signed by me to the county commissioners requesting that they step up to the plate and meet their obligation to us. I've been on the library board for 4 years. I've attended far too many meetings, and every time I've been in a meeting, the county has put graphs up, given me all sorts of reports indicating that they have enough funding for us through June of 2016. Money would not be a problem. And Nancy Troutman had 3 town hall meetings on funding at the libraries. I attended one of those. As a side note, I was not very welcome there by the county, but I attended. And again, she put up on her PowerPoint that there was money through 2016 or through June of 2016 to fund the libraries. We met with the library on June 15th over a funding issue. Wall was represented there, and I think Hill City was there. Yeah. And at that meeting, nothing was ever mentioned that they had a shortfall in funds. We had a meeting on the 16th with the county. We have to do a quarterly presentation to them, and we did that. And again, nothing was mentioned to us that there was a shortfall in funding. And then that following Thursday, we got the letter from the county commission saying they don't have the money. What does not make sense to me is the county collects money on county residents' property taxes. So it's a specific line item. We are told they have around $80,000 in the library budget. They owe us for our quarterly payment around $110,000. So their decision is to give us zero. Now explain that logic to me. So we may be short funding. The county commission is going to meet at their next meeting. This item will be on the agenda. Several of the county commissioners seem to be optimistic that this funding will get passed through their vote. It's only $80,000. That's got to be split between Hill City, Wall, and Rapid City, so we'd receive a portion of that. If we receive a portion of it, depending on what that dollar amount is, the local library does have enough funds to cover our expenses until we get the full payment that they're telling us we will receive in November, but we're not assured of that. If they vote not to fund us, we will be short money. And I guess the reason we're before you today is we will have to go before the City Council and request some supplemental funds to get us through until the county steps up to the plate and meets their obligation to us and hopefully would have the money in November. That'd be the end of my comments. If you have any questions, I'll certainly take those.
Sir, I'm sure we have a ton of them. Go first to item. Alderman Richie Nordstrom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Rod, thank you for bringing this to our attention. And some of the points that I'd like to make out, and hopefully everybody has been able to keep up with the issues that are taking place within the county. We've county commission specifically, and some of the concerns that I've had with some of other issues that they've brought up as well, besides the library. But specifically to the point of the library, I believe we have, if I recall correctly, there was a vote taken a few years back that that the citizens said they would like to have our city library service from the county residents. Am I correct in that assumption?
That'd be correct, Richie. They took 2 votes. I think one passed by 72% that they wanted library services, and the other one was a little over 80% that they wanted the county to provide library services.
And if I recall, there's no expiration date on that vote that was passed by the citizens that said we have a sunset clause in that vote.
Correct.
So my biggest concern is what happens at the next step if they are not able to fund us. The biggest concern that I have is termination of an employee or other employees with that from our library service, and then the public perception that we're going to have with the citizens out in the county that come in to use our services, and then we have to turn them down. Have you reached that stage of making that contingency?
Well, the business office for the library has done the math, and we believe 5 to 6 employees could be affected by us not receiving the funding. One suggestion was, start charging county residents library user fees. That doesn't make sense to me. At this point in time, they're paying a tax.
Yes.
To use the library, so how then can we charge them a user fee if they're already paying the tax? We'd get a lot of pushback from that, and I don't believe the library staff needs to be the police department down there and deciding who pays and who doesn't pay. That's not what they're hired to do. I believe this falls in the county's responsibility. Patrons of Pennington County have been clear they want library services. The county's got to figure out a way to pay for it. And we're just hoping that at their next meeting, they will at least have mercy upon us and release some of those funds.
Thank you. The only other area that I've had a good working relationship with one of the county commissioners, and we've visited about not just our library, but the other library that we had over at Western Dakota Tech. And I believe there may be some consternation because of that relationship that we had with the county and the Western Dakota Tech. So I hope that is not part of the ingredients that took place and is also happening with this development of this situation. So if there's anything that I can do to help with visiting with that particular county commissioner, I'd be glad to do whatever I can to help out.
Well, for full disclosure, Richie, up until that point in time, things to be much more positive. The Library Board of Trustees felt it was in the citizens of Rapid City's best interest and the county residents' best interest to pull out of that institution. It was costing us up to $250,000 a year, and numbers we heard were they had 7 people there. They can't tell us if that was 7 people per day, per week, per month, per year. They just tell us there were 7 people there. And we felt that was poor use of taxpayer dollars. So we voted unanimously to pull out of that institution. And it's my opinion that once we made that decision, things went south.
Thank you. And I know you've got one of our city council members as liaison, and I appreciate her talents coming forward with what she's been able to offer for the cooperation between the library and the county, and also bringing news back for us about the city library. So I just wanted to pay particular attention to our liaison and give a thanks to her as well. That's Alderman Drew.
Yeah. One comment I would make, it appears to me Deb Hadcock, one of the county commissioners, seems to have a much broader view of this whole situation. She served on the city council. I think she's got a lot of background and insight to how government works and how we all have to work together to make a better community. She's currently not our representative from the county. In fact, they don't have one on the board now. So if there's anything you folks can do to maybe influence the county to have her be sitting on our board, I think things would probably operate much smoother than they currently are.
Thank you, Rod. I'll yield.
Thanks, sir. Up next is Mr. Steve Laurenti.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Pettigrew, on the county meeting, when is that next meeting where they're taking this issue up again? Do we have a date?
July 7th.
July 7th. Okay, so that's soon. Do you have any sense on that? Have you talked to the commissioners? Do you have any sense on where that meeting will go on this particular issue?
I've talked to 3 commissioners. 2 believe it's a no-brainer, but they don't know if they can get 3 votes. 1 county commissioner has told me that it's going to be in their list of 80 pages of vouchers they have to pay, and he's guaranteed me that will be pulled and discussed. So I think it's going to be a close vote. Sad but true, it's all politics. It's not about black and white.
So I just want to make sure that I have this clear from the letter from them, is that they're basically delaying the third quarter payment. They're not saying they're not going to pay it, they're delaying it till October?
Correct.
Okay, so we're going to get the third and fourth quarter payments. How, if it actually ends up that way, that you don't get that third quarter payment till October, how does that affect the operations at the library until then?
Well, like I said, there's been discussion that could affect 5 employees. I think our position would be to come before the city council and ask for a supplement to our budget to cover that. Then when the county pays us, then we would pay the city back. The county can do that now. They have other funds and other budgets. They can supplement the library fund as well as you folks supplementing us. For some reason, there's pushback on that, and they don't want to do that.
Okay, so I'm gathering that we're going to get some feedback from you after this July 7th meeting with the county, at the county, is that correct?
Yes.
To let us know where that
Yes.
goes. So I guess I can reserve the rest of my comments, but we obviously support the library, and I absolutely appreciate you coming to us proactively to keep us abreast of what's going on, and please let us know, and we'll do what we need to do to make sure that the library is healthy. So
Thank you.
thank you.
Chair recognizes Library Liaison Darla Drew.
Yes, and I appreciate that from Richie Nordstrom, giving me some cred for being the liaison, and I send reports out to all the members, so they should be up on some of this stuff. I had a couple questions. The charge to the county residents, is that just part of their assessment, the bills they get from the county?
Yeah, on their property tax assessment, there's a separate line item for, I don't know what it says, somehow it refers to library funding, and that's based on evaluation. For every $100,000 their property's valued, I believe the numbers, they're assessed $21.50 for library services.
And if I recall correctly, when they were given a choice of paying for cards of $80 for a year, wasn't it something like that, or continuing with this service through the county, they decided to continue to fund the library through the county?
Correct. And a huge advantage to the county patrons is now when they pay their library fund, that whole family can use the library. If we go to library card, that's per person. So if there's 5 people in a family, they're going to have to buy 5 cards if they want the entire family to use the library.
So yeah, I think our county residents would like to be aware of this. I hope that they are, that this is something that's kind of in play for them at this point. And also, I just have to commend you, as libraries are struggling to make their place in this world of technology. Our library use continues to rise and continues to increase. There's more demands on your services than ever previously. You know, even with all the technological advancements and ways we can, access books and what have you, our library is happening. So you guys do a great job. We've got the genealogy and history section coming up that's going to open soon, and also the makerspace. So, it's always you guys are always advancing what you're doing down there. So thank you very much, and I think that we'll be able to reach something with the county. I think it's in their best interest.
Thank you. And I currently, my bad, we don't have a motion on this subject. If someone would like to offer one, that'd be great. Chair recognizes Juan Reifenbach.
We don't have a motion, so I'll move to acknowledge. And I'll hold the floor.
Motion by Reifenbach, acknowledged, second by Laurenti. Mr. Reifenbach, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Pettigrew, for your service on the library board and all the times that you've sit in the meetings. I understand all those meetings work. I've been in discussions with Commissioner Hadcock on some of this stuff too, and I believe that, like you had mentioned earlier, there's for some reason they're putting a shot across the bow. Don't understand why it is. I'm hoping that somewhere in between now and then maybe we could find out how much of that tax was allocated from outside the city. I'm assuming that's where that tax is apportioned. How much have they collected?
Well, they tell us, Ron, there's around $80,000 in that fund.
That they've collected, so.
Yeah.
I would assume that they were gonna probably take care of that obligation as they voted on handling that. And I don't know why they're shooting the shot across your bow. I wish that we could understand that. If there's an issue of some kind, I wish that they would come forward and visit with you guys or visit with the city or whatever it takes to get this accomplished. Because when you're looking at the pool of people and you're looking at the history of the county and the city, there's been a little bit of this going on, and it makes no sense to me. They're gathering the same monies from the same peoples. And the people, like Alderman Drew had said, that they voted to do this. They want the library services. The county commissioners there represent the people in the county and their districts. They don't represent themselves. They don't represent a political, if they're mad at someone at the city or at the library, they need to set themselves aside from this and come forward with it and say, hey, here's what's up. Here's why. It's obviously a political shot across the bow. I haven't heard anything about why that has happened. I would hope that they could, come forward and bring that to our attention of what it is, why they feel that they have to withhold these funds. I also agree with Alderman Laurenti that the city will, in my perspective, and my citizens will do whatever they can to try to keep building these relationships and moving forward. But if they want to be obstinate about it, then that's a whole different ballgame. But we appreciate you bringing it forward and bringing it to our attention. And hopefully they'll come to you and say, this is what our issue is, this is why we're, it makes no sense just to say we're not going to fund our obligation. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Motion is to acknowledge. Is there any further discussion? Thank you, gentlemen. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 20 is introduction and first reading of ordinance 6049 to amend provisions in the International Residential Code to address fire protection on floors by amending sections 15.13.208 of the Rapid City Municipal Code. Motion approved. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Nordstrom. Any discussion? Fire Department recognizes Tim Billings.
Thank you, and I am open to discuss the summary that I provide you today, just to give you some insight if you'd like. Otherwise, I can reserve that for Monday night.
You can reserve it for Monday night if you want to, if everybody's here, but it's up to you.
Okay. Well, I'll leave it up to you, folks. I'd love to just touch on it today, just a couple of things, but if it's clear to you.
Have the floor. It's up to you. It's your decision.
If I may approach the podium, please.
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. And I'm not going to go through this verbatim, but I just wanted to really just kind of give you an update of where we're at. We've discussed this issue for a number of months. A lot of different folks have been involved from the various committees all the way through the city, from the Building Code Board of Appeals, this particular group, the Home Builders Association, the Fire Department, City Council, and so forth. And so as we worked through that, we identified a lot of questions and concerns and other components to this. And hopefully this summary that we'll just briefly go over will clarify some of those pieces. The one, before I get into that, one piece that I needed to touch on is apparently there's a understanding that the fire department brought this piece forward, that we implemented this into the code within the city of Rapid City. And that's really not the case. It is actually an internal component of the International Residential Code as it was presented for the 2012 edition. And as you may have already read within the summary, that provision actually started with the International Code Council, and back in 2009, which initiated a joint effort between the Home Builders, National Association of Home Builders, International Association of Firefighters, American Wood Council, and International Association of Fire Chiefs Life Safety section to develop that particular section that's in question that you've kindly approved today. In an attempt to resolve the issue, the department has stepped back and looked at this thoroughly. We've met with the home builders on a single occasion and have had some other outside discussions with that. The position of the Rapid City Fire Department is we strongly support this particular item to be reintroduced into the 2012 code. For following 4 reasons. Modern lightweight construction has an accelerated fire failure rate of over old legacy construction, 6 minutes versus roughly 18 minutes. That's incredibly fast. Accelerated failure rates coupled with modern fire loads reduce the occupant's opportunity for escape and also hinder the abilities of firefighters to do our job, to implement any type of rescue or suppression opportunities. With the and how that really relates to us here locally. With the fire response time from the reported time of the fire, that's not from the time the fire starts, from the time it's reported, a 4 to 8 minutes average, an accelerated collapse rates of 6 minutes, the floor structures are virtually unstable by the time we get there, which really significantly hampers our efforts to augment any type of rescue operation or suppression activities should that occur or be necessary. The exclusion of Section 501.3, if it wasn't introduced back into the code, is a direct contradiction to the basic core responsibility of the fire department in providing public safety. As you know, a few months ago, Ordinance 609 effectively reduced the minimums already in the code, and I believe that the public expectation is that those minimums be maintained and retained. And I'm paraphrasing this report. I don't need to read that to you entirely. The Black Hills Home Builders, of which I'm an associate member as part of the city and have a lot of friends out there, we are on opposite sides of this. And their basic stand is primarily cost. And we appreciate that. Today, everything costs a lot of money, and unfortunately, this particular provision does come with a cost, although it's not incredibly high. The currently International Residential Code contains 4 basic exceptions or alternate methods to meeting those provisions of the code. The one that's typically keyed in on is the sheetrock provision itself. We've also, through the efforts over the last few months, we've identified 6 additional methods to meet the provisions of this particular section and have a cost range as low as 13 cents a square foot for a spray applied product to several dollars depending upon the complexity of the item to help meet that provision. And as you can see, probably the 3 most likely items to be utilized here in the city, half-inch sheetrock runs $80 to $1 per square foot to apply that, to protect that floor assembly. There's an FX lumber guard, which we're just getting final approvals on some of that or certifications, and that's 13 cents to about 50 cents a square foot for application. That's a spray applied material. And then, of course, fire sprinkler protection, which runs about $1.25 to $2 a square foot to protect that space. The next part was wasted material, was another component that the home builders brought to us, that once that unfinished basement was going to be finished, all of that applied sheetrock would have to be removed. And that's probably true. However, because of the provisions of the code, it doesn't require that all the joints are fire taped. It doesn't require that there's any other extra pieces or any other finishing to be done. So it can be unscrewed and removed rather than torn out and destroyed. As part of the wasted material, there's also some concern, or just some discussions we had, open discussions, that these efforts would provide a limited benefit in regards to time, that all of this money and this effort would provide a limited benefit. And really, it is time. That's what we're buying, is time. We've lost the time because of the differences in construction from the past to present, and we're trying to buy some of that back or get some of that back. And so the protection of the floor assembly is entirely about adding time, maintaining structural integrity longer, which aids in the occupant escape, as well as affording us the ability to do our job. And lastly, we start to talk a little bit about direct questions that came from you folks. And cost obviously was one of the biggest pieces, the cost comparisons, of which we've already touched on. And I noted that we looked at what we could remove or add or take away, and we're really not in a position to do that, to evaluate what we can remove from the code, because it's already a minimum standard to start with. But we tried to look at options that would minimize the impact for cost and work it forward from there. When it comes to cost effectiveness, the single most cost-effective option of all of these is the fire sprinkler protection component itself, only from the standpoint that it is the only option that truly addresses the problem. The problem is fire impingement on those. So from a cost comparison standpoint, that would be the most cost-effective, but that's not the base requirement nor the sole option. The second thing that you've asked of us was how many times we at the Rapid City Fire Department have experienced a real-life example of floor failure issues here in the city. And just a real brief piece of it here is that I identified a couple of things that were roof assemblies. And I identified the roof assemblies because it's the same characteristics that we experience in the floors. Just a week or so ago, we had a fire in an apartment building based from a lightning strike in an attic structure. The part of that roof assembly, if you've seen any of the YouTube videos from that, the failure of that roof assembly that fell to the floor or fell to the ground and the associated stairway occurred within 3 minutes of arrival of the fire engine. That is, that timing for the failure of that, ignition of that attic space and failure of that roof assembly is consistent with what we would expect to see in the floor assembly. Out in Black Gap, we had a floor failure back in February that was a close call, or we call them near hits, or near miss within the fire department, and where we had crews that were inside that experienced that atmosphere change abruptly as that floor system failed in the only portion of the home that didn't have a protected layer on the flooring of that. We've had a couple of incidents in the Johnson sighting area we responded to where our guys have either stepped through the floor, fallen through the floor partially, or recognized the problem before they entered. Same with Whispering Pines, we supported a couple in that area. Hideaway Lane, within the last couple of years, we've had an incident with a floor failure. And another attic is a field view attic, ceiling collapse in the southern side of the city, which also occurred within that 3 to 4 minute time frame. This is a real issue here in the city, and that's why we're concerned about it. We're taking this very, very seriously. Also, there's another question about affordable housing impact. The fire protection of the floor assembly has a positive impact as it provides that adds a level of safety for those structures that for the environment of the homeowner. The economic side of it is it's an estimated 0.5% to 1% of the construction cost is the cost to protect that floor assembly. From the reading we've done and calculations, it appears that its roads depend upon the home size and complexity and materials used. It's 0.5% to 1%. Lastly, I really need to note that this is not a battle between the Rapid City Fire Department and the Black Hills Home Builders. We're trying to work cooperatively. We try to address each other's needs, I think, and with this, we're still obviously at odds with Mr. Logge's statement earlier today. We hope we can find resolution in the future and understanding, and we'll move forward with that. But the fire department is simply charged with the responsibility to reduce risk and provide a safe environment for our citizens here and visitors here in the city, as well as our firefighters. I also feel that it's the city's obligation overall to support public safety through maintaining the minimum standards of the codes that we do utilize and adopt here in the city. So with that, just want to show you a couple quick pictures and appreciate your support of this particular ordinance.
Thank you, sir. The chair recognizes Community Planner Brad Salon.
Yeah, I'm Brad from Development Services. Yeah, I just wanted to let you know that, of course, Brett's not here today, but I appreciate Tim coming up and giving his little presentation. And Brett was hoping that you'd at least, at a minimum, give a continuance of this for 2 weeks. But I see you got a motion to approve it, and that's fine. So I just wanted to say thanks.
Okay, thank you. Can we get the lights back on in here? Is it okay?
Thank you. Absolutely.
Not that you're putting me to sleep. Just
nope. That's all right.
Okay. Chair, you done, sir? Any more? Okay. Chair recognizes Mr. Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Billings, for your presentation. I don't think anybody can argue against the statistics and safety factors that you have. And I don't think that Black Hills Home Builders would argue against that either, and I don't think there's any animosity between you, and I don't think it even takes an explanation. I think one of the points is the fact that over the years that I've seen these things, it continues to pile on. I have a little bit of vested interest in the home building business, and what I see from the perspective of codes and those types of things is always a take, and then we start adding on everything, and pretty soon, and we're getting to the point of pricing people out of everything. And I understand safety is a factor in everything we do. I mean, you can look at safety and the fact of driving your car or getting up off this dais and walking down the stairs. Do you add handrails? Do you add padded cushions around the doors? All these types of things. And I understand, and I have, and in the same breath, I'll say that I have been a staunch supporter of the safety issues. But I also believe that's important that when we look at this, and I've reiterated this from the very beginning, that it is also our duty to look at these things and say, where are we piling on? Where can we detract to actually try to minimize the impact? You say, oh, it's only this much. You know how many times I hear that? I hear when these people up here pass little tax fees or whatever and call them, they're not taxes or fees, Ron, and it's just this much, it's just this much, it's just this much, it's just this much, and all of a sudden you just start putting this much in a barrel and the barrel's overflowing. And then you try to make the argument against, and when I walk out of here, people say, well, Ron don't like the fire department or whatever. I mean, it comes back in that perspective. And I hope that we can maintain the professionalism and the courtesy of the fact that these guys are trying to protect their interests, because each time they get picked at a little bit from here and there, you're not the only guy picking at them. It's all the way across the board. And I understand it's an international building code, but if you go back to how international building codes are, and we talked about earlier looking at the library and the political factors that play in tune with this, and that's exactly what it comes from. These people sit up in these big high offices somewhere and make these political decisions based upon how much money they can make in certain areas. What can we do? You know, that affects this stuff all the way down. Can we require them to put scalding rags underneath the drain on a sink? Things that don't make sense. And I believe that there's opportunities there, but everybody's unwilling to look at those opportunities and say, how can we back off on some of these things? Now we're looking at the next item. It's going to add another cost too. And then it's like, okay, where do we just draw the line here? And where do we just say, listen, let's engage somebody? Because I've said this from the very beginning, and I don't think it's my responsibility to engage it and say, how do we, cut some costs here? Where can we cut back and make sense? Safety is probably more priority than it would be to, somebody's house falling apart. I don't know. But the fact of the matter is, where do you draw the line? I mean, you just the list goes on and on. So I understand where the home builders are coming from. They're not attacking you. They don't, probably not even second guessing your safety statistics. The fact is, everybody's piling on, and everybody's, all the fees, the taxes. If you've looked at your tax bills lately, your electric bills, your gas bills, your water bills, I mean, it's to the point now where the median income in Rapid City is $42,000 a year. And will this make a difference? Probably not, but when you add them all together, they do make a difference. And that's where I have an issue with this. Nothing to do with the safety. I'd love to say, let's do it. You mentioned earlier, you talked about a spray that was going to go on, but we don't even know if that's approved yet. I mean, if that was approved, that's way more livable than $82 a square foot or 13 cents a square foot. That's a huge difference when you're talking a 1,500 square foot house or whatever whatever they are, 1,100, 1,200 average now, maybe somewhere in there. So I just wish that our city or somebody in here would take the time to look at the code and say, here's some areas where we can make it, we can add this here, but take away here. As long as I've been here, in the 5 years, 6 years, or whatever it is, I've never seen that happen. I've only seen the piling on effect, and everybody comes and says, it's only this much, Ron. It's only this much. But after a while, and you can look, and people are feeling the effects out there. So it's unfortunate, the timeliness of how these things happen, but it's a fact. And so I'm not exactly sure where I'm going to be on this. I've asked for people to come forward and see where there's opportunities that we can take something back and say, these don't make sense anymore. Why do we have this? We can take this out, but let's require this, and then we got to break even, and we actually added safety. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Steve Laurenti.
Thank you, Chair. And I appreciate the words of Alderman Weifenbach. Him and I have talked a little bit about this, and maybe a few of the other people one-on-one here and there, but on the council. But there is no doubt that we would be good to get some input from the Home Builders Association and city planning to see if there are areas where we are, if you will, overtaxing. I can't think of a better word at this point, but where we're creating situations where it's costing home builders a lot. And we need to do that. There's no doubt about that. And I think there are areas, if we dig into it, we'll find it. From the standpoint of this particular issue, in my opinion, it's a no-brainer. In my opinion, you need to, especially if you're going to use sheetrock. If I'm not a home builder, but I'm thinking from the purchaser of a home, I would love to, granted, the cost of sheetrock as from what I'm understanding here, is 80 cents to $1 a square foot. Is that installed? Do you know?
Yeah, Mr. Chair?
If you would, if you could, if you'd answer that for me, Mr. Billings.
It's more like about $1.75 a square
Okay.
foot, but.
The price I actually received was from a contractor that provided that. It was 80 cents for materials and installed, and then another 12 to 15 cents roughly to do the finish, because it wasn't a clear finish work. It was just simply joints, which isn't required. So.
Right. And to me, that's the other side of it. And I want my colleagues, I'm hoping they will think about that as well. This cost that is here is something that a home builder will ultimately want long term. Because they're going to need to sheetrock the areas that are unfinished anyway. Is it an additional cost? Absolutely. I don't think anybody can dispute that. But what you have to subtract from this cost is the fact that a person buying a home is going to have to go buy the sheetrock themselves when they do it. So if it costs a home builder 80 cents to $1 a square foot, take that times a 1,200 square foot home, you're looking at that cost of added on to a home possibly, but it's a selling point as well from a real estate standpoint. If you can say, well, the sheetrock's already up, now you'll have to have it taped and textured the way you want it and everything else. But to me, it's a selling point as well. I'm just speaking as a buyer. Not all buyers, because you're right. You're talking $1,200, maybe $2,000 increase in the cost of that home, but you're also talking about fire protection as well. So from that standpoint, there's a positive. It just makes sense to me that ultimately this material is going to need to go on those unfinished areas. It's a selling point for realtors because it's something the home buyer doesn't have to do. And granted, some people are probably better at putting up sheetrock than I am, for sure, no doubt about that. But it just makes sense. But I will say that we need to, as a council, dig into, with the help of staff, to find ways that we can reduce costs. I have no doubt that we can do that. I bet a decent amount of money that we can find areas of the ordinance where we're requiring builders to do certain things that have not come to fruition, that have not produced what was hoped from that ordinance, that we can shave out of there. That will do just what Alderman Weifenbach was saying, because he's right. Government always finds a terrific issue and way to increase costs, and we're just not really good at reducing them, except for garbage collection, if I remember. That's the only reduction I think I've served on and voted for while I've been on the council. So I'm hoping that my colleagues will see some of the points that I've pointed out today, vote for this common sense move, not only from a safety standpoint, but to me it's a selling point for a buyer standpoint. Is there at some point a negative for a buyer? Absolutely. I think there's a tipping point, but I don't think that homes in Rapid City have gotten to that point. I don't think we're having a problem selling homes in Rapid City, but I'm not a realtor. But I do know some, and I have talked to some of them, and they haven't said that they're having a problem selling homes. I don't think that the average of about $1,200 for something, again, that the buyer or the home buyer is going to have to buy themselves at whatever cost, so you got to subtract that from it, this particular cost here. Seems very minimal, getting the safety issue and getting the sheetrock that the home buyer is ultimately going to need to buy themselves when they decide to finish it. So I'm hoping my colleagues will support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Did Steve Laurenti do committee as a tax and spend guy? That's the only thing you were... Okay. The chair recognizes Jill Landine, city attorney.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And my comments is not really specifically about this issue in particular, but just some of the comments that have been made. And the idea that when these requirements come up, it's continually adding and no subtraction. My understanding from talking to building inspection staff and fire staff is that, when this code is negotiated on the national level with the national home builders, there is a give and take. And that one of the things that I don't think the average person understands is that in the international fire code, it's anticipated and it's believed that we're going to require the installation of sprinklers. So there was a lot of concessions made for some building requirements contemplating that sprinklers would be installed. Well, because of state law, we can't require sprinklers, and that's not something that's supported here. But it's my understanding we have, even though we don't require sprinklers, we have allowed some of those exceptions that were written into the code because they thought there would be sprinklers installed. So maybe previously, and I'm just throwing this out there as an example potentially, that there was a 2-hour firewall required and now it's not because they anticipate you'll have sprinklers. So there are concessions made. They're generally made at the national level, is my understanding. And maybe as staff, we need to do a better job of highlighting what some of those concessions that have been made at the national level are, so you understand that. And then also discuss, if there are concessions being made based on things like sprinklers and stuff, maybe we should be having more of a discussion about whether or not those should be incorporated into our version of the code, because we're not going to require sprinklers. So I don't know that it's fair to say that there's just always more and no concessions. My understanding is there have been concessions made. Again, these are negotiated on the national level with the national home builders. And so, I just don't want anyone to have I think we need to have a better discussion about whether or not it is just all take and there is no give, because I think there may have been some give.
Just as a point of, I'm not a code expert, but I do believe if their sprinklers are involved, there's certain things you don't have to do, and if sprinklers are involved, then there's things you have to do. Does that be a fair statement? I think that, so to say there's concessions all along based upon sprinklers, yeah, if you have a sprinkler and there's certain things you don't have to do, but if you don't have a sprinkler and there's things you have to do to like, for instance, underneath of a stairwell, if it's sheetrocked, you don't have to put a sprinkler in there. Or if you have a sprinkler in there, you don't have to sheetrock it. So there's give and take in those codes as well. Chair will recognize Mr. Richie Nordstrom. You haven't spoken yet, have you?
Not on this subject, anyway. The city attorney's got me thinking about something, and I need to digest it a little bit further. But essentially, some of the things that I wanted to speak about on the issues that have been presented so far is that the fire that was recently, we were informed about, I believe it was in Black Gap.
Correct.
Yes, that the employees happened to be in the right place at the right time, and they saw that the floor was very unstable, and so they did not enter it. If the employee wasn't there to see it and see that, make the correct observations, we could have potentially lost some employees, or at a minimum severely injured some employees. So I'm on the side of this ordinance proceeding. However, if there is some other discussion that needs to be taking place on that, I'm open for hearing more information on this. One of the other factors that I'm very supportive of this is I'm looking at this at a little bit different angle, as I see this as more of an insurance policy. Is that Alderman Laurenti suggested that the price could be in the neighborhood of $1,200, using $1 per square foot for a $1,200 cost estimate for a 1,200 square foot house. And that's just an estimate. So, and I'm looking at that as part of the insurance that not only for the homeowner, probably could be used as a course to be used for diminishing the spread of the fire, and also for me it's an insurance to the homeowner as well. Yes, I understand the cost in it, but still, we have to have these insurances around for other matters of all kinds of anyway. So I'm looking at this as an insurance policy for the homeowner and for our employees. I know there's been some discussion about the affordable housing aspect of it coming in, and I'm a very strong supporter of creating more affordable housing on it. But again, for me, it's an insurance policy that is put onto that house. And the last part I want to talk about is that I noticed that in the letter that's saying that you folks with the home builders are on way opposite sides on this whole issue. So I'm hoping that good friends can still get together and talk about this, and the city attorney brought us some good points that maybe we can have some further discussion on, and some of these other factors that we can take into consideration. But I'm still supportive of this effort being moved forward, and primarily just so we have the protection for our employees. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll yield.
Chair recognizes Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When you get to that point, and it's a typical argument when you don't want to face any realities, is just to start saying, well, it's only this much, and we're going to protect these people or protect that people. I just assume we passed an ordinance that says no fires in anybody's houses. Can't happen. Just ain't going to happen. Well, that's not realistic. And I understand that the safety to you guys is paramount. I understand that. Yeah, has there been concessions at the national level? Yeah. But home building, let me tell you, it's different in every city, county, state that you go into. It's all different. The International Building Code is a book that a regular person like you and I couldn't even buy. We have to go in and buy it. We can't come down here and get a copy of the building code because it's a copyrighted book. It's a business. We got to understand it's a business, and it's a political business. I still would request that at some point somewhere, and I'm going to ask Mr. Loggy because he looked like he was about ready to jump out of his seat when we were talking about things, opportunities that we can save money and make this work. But it just seems that we don't even try to make this work. We just, and I understand the fire department's position, absolutely. If it was me and I was watching out for my people, I'd want to do everything. I don't care what it costs, because the life or the safety of one person is priceless, especially if it's your son or your dad or your husband or your spouse or whatever it is. I understand that. But making that argument all the time is pathetic in my mind. It's pathetic because it's like a lack of wanting to do anything else. It's just easy to put it, and make me go home and feel guilty about voting against this today. And I'm not going there. I think that the city deserves the opportunity to look and see where we can make this work. I want this to work. There's no doubt about it. And I think we can. So, Mr. Loggy, do you have something that you wanted to visit about here that we could bring up?
Come on, Tim, give me a chance.
I'll give you a chance.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot on the table here. Speaking towards codes are where the money is. Industries are invested in codes to have their products sold as being the next best thing. There's rampant use of that. NHB is only at the table to say, hey guys, the cost is out of hand. We don't really have a say in it in NHB. All we can do is lobby and say, guys, this is adding too much cost. I think the last code issue, there was around 1,000 code issues. I think NHB got 600 tabled. Of that, new house could have maybe cost another $60,000. Let's put that into perspective. Codes are where the cost comes from. We quit adopting codes. Yeah, does that make sense? I don't know. This year, in the 2015 code, a concession has been made by the IRC that every code change will come with a price tag. Will that help? I don't know. Can we go back and adopt old codes and then just pick the new ones we like? Not sure. Not sure how state law can do. I'm going to pick on the electrical code. I've been speaking to an electrical contractor who's been doing work for me, and I said, my house was built in 1999. I use that code. I think it costs $2,000, $3,000 to wire the house. Thousands of dollars on top of that now since codes since. Is there some pluses? Yeah, there's child-proof outlets and things like that. Do you back up, adopt an old code, and then just pick the good stuff off that has benefit with the dollars? Maybe we need to look at that. I don't know whether we can do that here. I know Nebraska, there's areas where they still use the 1999 electrical code, and Brad can probably correct me on these, but that's where it's going to start. That's going to be step one. In regards to this sheetrock issue, I want to talk about that. We're talking the sheetrock only. Typically, an unfinished basement, your electrical's not in, your plumbing's not in, your HVAC's probably not in. Guess where that is? It's going to be above that sheetrock. Where's the sheetrock going to go? Down and in the garbage. So you are truly, when you're looking at this, you're looking, I'm just going to throw the $1,200 out because it's going to vary by the size of the house, but that's truly what you're looking at. If that money is worthy to protect peace of mind, that's what you're trying to decide. To me, it's garbage unless you're going to put your electrical in, pay extra, get an extra permit, do that. So basically, you're finishing the basement. You're not putting in the sheetrock on the walls. Is truly what you're doing. And if you're doing that, that is going to raise the price of your house several thousand more dollars than just the sheetrock. I'm looking at sheetrock only is the $1,200 figure. Let's just use that on an average house. It's everything else that goes with that if you want to maintain the integrity of that ceiling. When you go in a remodel, first thing you're going to do is pull down. Are you going to pull down 100% of it? Maybe not. I don't use 1/2 inch rock on the ceilings. I use 5/8 because I don't like to have sag in between my joists. A lot of builders do that. Is it a better product? Yeah, but it also costs more. So that's where you're getting into the cost difference on this. Yeah, and so I just wanted to clarify that a little bit. Is it a benefit to the owner? Truly, you know, from a, I'm going to say life safety standpoint, that it's truly that's what it is. But from a building standpoint, if you don't do the upfront work and get your electrical, plumbing, and all that dropped down, you basically roughed your whole basement in, raised the price of your house, additional costs. So that, I mean, that's the fine line we're looking at. Is it's only a benefit if it's going to stay there when it's done, you know, from the cost side. So, you know, I've put a lot of things out, but codes, I think, are where we got to go. I don't know what options we have. I'm going to bring it up at the state meeting. I have a state home builders meeting. We may ask to say, state, quit adopting codes. It doesn't allow the locals to adopt them then, but we got to start somewhere. You can't tell me in the county, they are far more, if they're using the true IRC code, there's no modifications in the counties. You know, the only inspections true are electrical, plumbing, so those are being followed by code, but, you know, the rest of this, I mean, codes are truly out of hand. And it'll be interesting to see how the 2015 code gets adopted with a price tag being attached to them. Because housing is expensive. I'm going to put a number out there. We built a house and sold it for $180,000. I would say 7 years ago. That same house is $380,000. Lot price did not change. So just think about that, how much housing is going up. I mean, it is getting scary, and affordable housing should be a big issue here. We are not high-income state, and the only way you're going to get affordable is to go smaller. So, you know, if we're going to be looking at a one-bedroom house, which mortgages don't even want to mortgage, you know, it is a wicked, evil circle that is on us right now, and we're going to have to conquer this as an entire group, maybe an entire city, and figure out how we're going to go with this, because you know, affordability is a huge issue. And you know, building, you know, why is there so many apartment buildings going up for rent? You know, people can't afford to build a new house or buy a house. So I mean, that's food for thought.
I appreciate that, Mr. Logan. I think you're right about we all need to come together. I wish we would have came together a lot sooner on this, and we would have had a real good game plan instead of just coming out and whacking you over the head with a baseball bat on these things, and looked for opportunities to find ways to make these things work. I mean, like I talked about, the curbs, the sidewalks, all that stuff is ridiculous. You go up to Red Rock, you got $500,000 houses that got little tiny like boulevards that are full of weeds, and just because the city requires it, the curbs are rolled over, they want to make the argument it can't drain the water as quickly, which I don't see any problem with in the Elks where I live. There's no problems with it at all. And we got rolled curb, we got sidewalk that goes to the curb. I've never had anybody ever get ran over there either. Matter of fact, it's probably one of the safest streets in town. So there's opportunity, there's room for opportunity, and I wish that we'd have that conversation. I think you both want to have that conversation, but for some reason we haven't had it. And I started from the beginning saying that I'm not against any safety issues. No, I mean, if we had no fires, that'd be a perfect world. But we still need that insurance policy. Like that the fact is that you're there if something does happen. I mean, that's just the reality of having a fire department, having a well-equipped and good fire department who's concerned about the safety of the people. But at what point do you just draw the line, besides of putting people in bubble wrap and saying, you know what, you can't even live in your house anymore. I just did a mortgage for a person, a first-time home buyer in today's world, so you guys understand. The cheapest house they could find is $175,000. That was basically that was available on the market. I mean, that's $1,100 payment for a reality check for you guys. And yeah, $1,200 ain't much, but we're going to add $1,200 plus another $1,200 plus another $1,200. County can't pay their dues to the library. They're going to raise the taxes. It's a non. You know, it's a thing. The thing that in our responsibility is to start as a council and leadership is to start finding out ways to make these things work. You know, Kaplan has a reason to bring these things forward. Okay, it's probably not his responsibility to find things to cut costs. He's doing what he needs to do to protect his people and protect the people in the houses. But I think this has been a conversation that's been well had. I think it's not been long enough, but I just got to draw the line somewhere. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Darla Drew.
Well, in this case, I think that I agree with Ron, and I won't be supporting this change in the code. And the main reasons being that we're looking at an industry that's just starting to recover from recession, and they are getting stronger. It doesn't do anything for the homes that are already here. You hope that maybe they do have the good old-fashioned, really strong construction, but we're not sure. And how to enforce this, I don't know. So I think that it bears looking at some more. So I can't really vote for this at this point. Thank you.
And last but not least, Mr. Laurenti, please.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Loggy, if I could ask you a question, please.
Yeah.
Thank you for clarifying that for me, because I didn't think about the electrical. But if this were passed, I think ultimately it's going to come to fruition at some point, but maybe not now. But if this did pass, would builders, and I'm asking for your opinion at this point, would builders typically, knowing that they're going to have to sheetrock those areas, would they typically do those things then? The other services, the electrical,
It's hard to say. If it's out of their price point, they're not going to do that. They're going to do what is absolutely minimum to do, and maybe something else will get cut to keep that house in the same price range. I mean, it's give and takes. So you might have cheaper fixtures on your vanities and things like that. Something that's going to break sooner and things like that. Okay. It's a give and take. I can't speak for every builder.
I understand. That.
I don't know what percentage of houses this will really take place. If you have an unfinished basement, yeah. If all you have is an unfinished mechanical room, there isn't going to be nearly as much cost, and you have up to 80 square feet. But I truly want you to look at this. It's the way I look at it, it's a $1,200 cost. Are you gaining that back? You're gaining peace of mind, perhaps. That's what you guys have to deliberate. It is peace of mind. Is it life safety? Things like that. That's truly what the number you have to look at. Getting a cost benefit for it is truly going to be a case-by-case benefit, or a case-by-case. And typically, if you have an unfinished basement, you have 2 or 3 lights in the ceiling, just enough to light it up.
Right.
So, I mean, that's why I say, most of this is going to come out. So it is to me, it's a one-time cost that you're going to go up and then tear to have it taken down and then put new material up. Is it the 100%? I can't say. It's going to be on a house-by-house basis.
And I guess that's what I wanted to do, was get a feel for how home builders, if this is instituted, if this is passed, how do you, because there are consequences, there are actions that the home builders would take, and I just wondered how they would do it. Would they just throw up sheetrock without running the other services down to that area?
Yeah, probably. I mean, it's going to be the least impact. First thing we're going to do is see what all the alternatives are out there. I-joist with the spray on, if it works, great idea. I don't use I-joist. I use floor trusses. Not such a good idea, because there's just too many nooks and crannies and things like that. Will other products be out there? I don't know. Can you just put some type of wrap on the ceiling? We are looking into that right now. I did see some stuff in Washington, D.C. that was there. It kind of looks expensive, but they have it on commercial buildings, wrapping the outside of scaffolding that's called fire resistant. First thing I saw is fire retardant on it. Well, I got somebody looking into that to see how expensive products is. First thing we're going to do is come up with another solution. Okay. If we can find one that's less expensive, or something that could perhaps be reused again later. Sheetrock, not so much to do that. Once you put screws in it and pull it out, it just starts to fall apart. I am just going to say, if it comes through, if this is passed, people are just going to add the sheetrock. Something else may have to give or take. It may not. I can't speak for every contractor, but I don't look at it as a bonus to a homeowner, thinking, oh, my ceiling's already sheetrocked, and then all of a sudden we got to go cut in all the light fixtures.
Right.
Finish running the plumbing. So that's the balance.
That was my assumption when I made that statement. So, and that's why I wanted to give that to you, because I hadn't thought about that. I was assuming that you typically would run that wiring down there and have the box there. But you're saying that's not typical.
Not if it's an unfinished space. You're only allowed to do so much. Just to there's a code requirement that you have some electric down there and general lighting, but that's typically it.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Motion is to approve. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair, may I have a rebuttal of just a couple of key
No,
points
we're done for now, unless someone here wants to talk to you. I think we've discussed this ad nauseum.
Yeah.
Do you really want to talk some more? Yeah. Fair enough. Steve Laurenti.
Mr. Billings, if you could, please.
Thank you very much, and I'll keep it brief. The alternate items are taken away pieces. We do, as the Rapid City Fire Department, the City of Rapid City, have looked at numerous ways to do that, and probably the developer sees the greatest benefit of that. Reduced street widths in some areas, cul-de-sac lengths, reduced asphalt. We look at alternate building means, and most often the fire sprinkler component is the piece that offsets those other provisions. So we are aggressively looking at pieces of the code that we can peel away, or existing rules and criteria. So I got to let you know, we're not just sitting on our laurels not looking at that stuff, because it is a big deal to us to try to shave costs wherever we can and reap the biggest bang for whatever buck is spent. Our cooperative effort with the home builders is very good. I don't have any disgust with that or anything on that note. And lastly, all we're talking about here today, the vast majority of the conversation has been sheetrock. You have to remember there's 6 or 7 other options which allow the use of that area, which wouldn't require sheetrock. Could be the spray applied, could be the fire sprinkler protection, and so forth. So there's a lot of different ways to address that are positive.
Okay. I appreciate that as well. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Motion is to approve. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
No. Motion fails 3-2. Up next, now we go to council without recommendation. Recommendation not to pass, excuse me. Duh. Sorry about that. Up next, item number 21, introduction, first reading of ordinance 6050 to amend provisions in the International Residential Code to address compressible, shifting, and expansive soils by amending Chapter 15.13 of the Rapid Municipal Code. Chair recognizes Brad Salon, Community.
I'm Brad from Development Services, and once again, Brett's not here, but he was hoping that this would be continued for 2 weeks since staff didn't have any opportunity to talk to the home builders, and I don't believe Carla did either, so.
I would entertain that motion.
Move to continue.
Second.
Motion by Norseman, second by Laurenti. Any further discussion? Thank goodness. Steve Laurenti.
Thank you, Chair. And I'm gonna take liberty today because I'm generally.
Motion is to continue.
I have generally been fairly quiet because I've made up my mind and knew how I was going to vote after the committee meetings at full council. But on this particular issue, because it is an important one to me, I just wanted to add that. Well, actually, I think I have a question. Although Mr. Wheeland is not here.
Continuation of the motion.
Mr. Loggy, were you involved? If I could have you one question, please.
Mr. Loggy, as long as it involves continuation.
I recommend we continue it. What's your
My question to you on the continuation, because Mr. Wheeland had said that you guys weren't able to get together, which is part of.
We never met with Mr. Weiland.
Okay.
We met as Black Hills Home Builders, and we had an attorney present. Being some of the cases Mr. Weiland had, we weren't sure it'd be a good idea to meet with him. We were going to forward him the ordinance, but it kind of got. I know our attorney that we were dealing with that was drawing up everything that we had got with Carla, and we thought we were good to go up until Tuesday morning, I think, when I got a call back and said the soils guys are no longer comfortable with the way we have it written. Truly, it was even more in depth than the first time we did it, because we did have that's where we're at. We will have to get together. Are we at an impasse? I don't know. I don't know yet, because the soils people want to be included all the way through the process. The only other way about it, we're going to probably have to have a meeting now with building inspection and things like that to see if there's another way to do this where we already identify the areas that have issues and just automatically overdig.
Okay.
Not good either. But.
Right. So in 2 weeks, do you think something comes to fruition on this issue or no?
Will we have a final one? I mean, I'm happy to bring forward with what we have, but we don't have the support of the soils, and indirectly I was told if they don't do the final inspections, they won't even do the initial ones. So there's the hitch in the giddy up there. So now we're on a job creation program. you know, and I understand where they're at. I'm sure it has to do with their liability and insurance is where it's at, but I thought we had a good proposal that we were going to bring forward that got kiboshed. So we'll probably, you know, 4th of July coming up and everybody's on vacation. I'm hoping to meet next Wednesday, home builder wise, and you know, we know where the soils guys are at. We'll either come back and bring the same thing, but truly, if they're not going to participate, it's not going to do any good to bring that ordinance back forward. You know?
Okay, thank you, and I appreciate it. And I have one last question for Mr. Salon.
Of course you do. Salon.
Mr. Salon, can you speak to this at all? Where are we going to be in 2 weeks? Continuing it for 2 weeks, am I just 2 weeks from now, are we going to say, oh, we need another 2 weeks?
I don't know about that. Like I said, we didn't get anything, you know, we didn't get a proposed ordinance that we could review or anything by today, so I don't know.
So let me ask you, it sounds like the sticking point from Mr. Loggy is saying is the people who will actually do the testing. Do you have any opinion on that? I mean, do we need to have staff meet with these soils people? I mean, if we're wanting to pass, let's say it passes, what are we going to do?
You know, some of the soils people, we've talked to them. They've came to some of the building board meetings. They were at some of these meetings. We talked to them in the hallway, and I think their attitude has changed somewhat from one meeting to the next. So I'm not really sure what they want now. So I mean, we can meet with them, no problem.
Yeah, I would say it goes back to liability. You know, if they do the initial inspection and say there has to be over excavation and material, you know, engineered fill put back in, you know, what our solution was, we have plenty of people involved. Some people are going to use the soils guys all the way through, at least a few times until they get comfortable with it. And that's essentially, you know, the contractors are licensed, they're insured. We thought a licensed contractor signing an affidavit saying, yes, this work was done per the requirements. Whether the soils guys are going to want another affidavit saying they didn't use us, so we no longer take responsibility in this, right. I don't know. I don't know what the situation is. My fear is that if, you know, construction is picking up and if it continues,
right.
They are going to have to staff up, so they're going to be short-staffed. Is all the costs associated with that going to go up too? It's hard to say. You know, that's where we're at. I was kind of all stoked because I thought we had this thing nailed down, and that kind of kiboshed, you know.
Okay, because I'm just a little frustrated because it's been a month. Number two, we have neighboring cities doing soil testing, so I don't understand what I'm going to say but soils testing firms or the engineering firms that would do the soil testing in our area, how their exposure is different than any exposure in, say, Gillette. So I'm just a little confounded as to why we're sitting here in this situation. But I'm going to vote yes for the continuation, and I'm hoping in 2 weeks that we can move forward. And I don't think we can make it perfect before we pass it. I think that's going to be, I don't think government has ever passed anything perfectly. And we will need to, if we need to adjust it after we pass it, then we need to adjust it after we pass it. And that's what we'll do. I'll be one of the first ones to bring that forward if that needs to be done. So,
and Brad and I can attest, that's originally the way this came about, is doing it this way because it was the first baby step. We kind of figured the same thing. It's 100% better than doing nothing.
Right.
But that one kind of quashed us a little bit. So.
All right. I appreciate your input. Thank you.
Darla Drew on continuation.
Yeah, we have been talking about this for a long time, and sometimes cities move extremely slowly, and that can be a good thing. That means that we're thinking about it because this is an important initiative, and we're trying to change something that's been in place for a long time. And we're looking at soils and those kinds of things that are changeable, or we don't know if they're going to be different over here or over here. You know, it's a hard, big problem. And so I want to be able to vote for this, but somebody's got to give me something that I could vote for. So I've got to vote for the continuation, and I think that it's right because you guys don't have your what you really want to do figured out yet. And that's what I want to know from you is what I'm not a builder, I'm not a realtor, I'm none of those things. And I think that this moving slowly is probably one of the better things we've done.
Mr. Weifenbach on the continuation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make an amendment to direct staff upon this continuation to actually meet with the soils people because I'm ready to vote. So, I mean, I'll give it the continuation.
Well, we have a objection to that, Mr. Lundin?
Well, I mean, I don't know that there's an organization of soils people. I mean, there's people that do soils work, but
There's probably about 3 companies in Rapid City that do it, I think.
And what do we? They don't. I mean, what do we do? I mean, if they tell us, I guess my caution to you would be, don't pass an if the ordinance requires, if the suggestion is they do the initial, and then they don't, and then you pass that, and then they refuse to do it, then we're going to have a big mess because nobody's going to be able to get the sign off that they need.
So we just
but
pass
I
it
don't
and guess then, or that's what I'm asking you. If we can, if the staff can meet with them or somebody on that represent them, if you know.
And do what?
I mean, otherwise we're just guessing. Oh, hell, I'll do it. Thanks.
So the motion is to continue this item until the next Legal and Finance Committee in 2 weeks, which would be, which date, Maggie? 15th of July. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 22 is clarification on request to allow miniature dairy goats as therapy service animals. Chair recognizes Darla Drew.
I move to get the clarification. What are we getting here? Is this
I do believe the idea is that staff would like some direction as to how to proceed with this item, to deny or approve the request.
Clarification and then to deny or approve?
Yeah, you need to make a motion to either deny or approve.
Okay, because
or
it just
to direct
says
staff to
clarification.
allow this in the city limits.
Okay, I make a motion to approve.
There's a motion approved. Do we have a second?
Approve what?
Approve the miniature dairy goats.
Well,
there's no seconds. The motion dies of lack of
Right.
second. The chair recognizes. Darla Drew, you still have the floor.
Okay. I just wondered what kind of animals are allowed in town. If you talked to Mr. Glasgow or anything like that, did he come and talk to you, Mr. Lundin?
well, not to me specifically, but they did say they were going to come to the council, and so we did hold abeyance taking any action on removal of the goats. I mean, obviously, goats are defined as livestock under the city ordinance, so animals defined as livestock are not allowed within the city unless your property is zoned agricultural and you've got 3 acres. There's restrictions against having it within livestock within 150 feet of a dwelling used as a residence unless it's your own dwelling. So you combine all that, and basically, if you have if your land is annexed in, it's agricultural, and you have 3 acres, you can have livestock. Goats are defined as livestock. How we would exactly, if you want to direct staff, I mean, to make it legal, you would have to change the ordinance. So you can direct staff to change the ordinance. If you just want to remove goats, then, do you want to remove goats and allow only with a doctor's note? I mean, or I'd be careful. I mean, I don't know that you're going to be flooded with a bunch of requests for therapy animals, but I don't know that you're not. I mean, is therapy chickens next? I mean, where do you want to draw the line? And that's kind of what staff's going to need is guidance. If you want to allow this, we're going to have to change the ordinance. And the question is where you want to draw the line.
Well, I don't think I want to change an ordinance. We've been down this path before with the chicken situation, and it's difficult, it's divisive, and as much as I like Mr. Glasgow and I understand his and his wife's desire to keep the goats, I don't think that we can do anything about it at this time. We'll have to enforce the ordinance.
Chair recognizes Richie Nordstrom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If it's all right, I'll just move to acknowledge this request and leave it at that point.
Would that be a proper motion, Mr. Landine?
I think it should probably just so the whole council can address it, send it to council without recommendation. And
that's my motion.
Motion moved without council recommendation. Any further discussion? Okay, sir, what this means is it goes to council that we have not approved or denied this at this point. You have a chance to present yourself again at council on Monday night. So any further discussion? All in favor, say Richie Nordstrom.
If I can just, Mr. Glasgow,
Sure.
just to give you a heads up, what I'm thinking is that you and I had this conversation before, but you will have to go down the same road as the chicken folks are doing, and that process. So we had greater detailed discussion, so that's all I'm suggesting. Thank you.
All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Nordstrom, second by Laurenti. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you.